Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Socolow. I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the AEI fellows with Athlete Ally. And if you don't know about Athlete Ally already, we are an organization, a nonprofit that fights to end homophobia and transphobia in sport and uplift the athletic community to really try and champion LGBTQ equity and inclusion. Uh, Now, as an AEI fellow, me and my colleagues have helped work on a comprehensive research project that examines all Division I athletic departments and looks at their inclusive policies and practices. And I am really excited today to have a panel with four wonderful guests, each from a respective Division I athletic program to talk about LGBT inclusion in sport and especially with sport administrators. So I'm going to kick off our brief guest bios. Maria, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ryan. I'm very excited to be in this panel with these wonderful people who are champions in their own right, certainly. My name is Maria Sanchez. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as a Senior Associate AD and Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer at Northwestern University. I've been at Northwestern for 10 years now and spent the majority of my time there serving as an academic advisor and the director of our student development program, and have shifted in the last year to this Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer role for both athletics and recreation. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Mike, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan and Athlete Ally, for inviting me. Shout out to the panel. I'm humbled and honored to be a part of it. My name is Micah Jaffis. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the linebackers coach at Marist College, as well as a founding member of the IDEA committee, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action. I also have a little side gig. I'm a producer for our ESPN games, picked up a little stuff during COVID. I'm going in my third year at Marist, and then in the IDEA committee just a year, so going into my second year. And like I said, honored to be here.
Great, thank you. Kate, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ryan, for having me in Athlete Ally. Really excited to be here. Really excited to be along the other panelists with me. I am Kate Miller. I use she, her pronouns. I am going into my third year as well at Columbia University. I am the Leadership and Wellbeing Coordinator. And so what this position entails is I oversee our leadership development program, which started about 3 years ago, right when I came in. And I also oversee mental health counseling and providing mental health counseling services for our student athletes. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York. And I am also the faculty advisor for our brand new chapter of Athlete Ally. I guess it's no longer brand new. It started right before the pandemic. So with this whole year feels brand new, but that started March 2020. So literally the week before the shutdown, but really excited to have been asked to step into that role. And it's been a really wonderful journey. So really excited for the conversation that's coming.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Mac, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'll just echo what everyone else has already said. It's an honor to be a part of this panel today, and really excited to be here and for this upcoming discussion we're going to have. My name is Dr. Mac Brown. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Assistant Director and Training Coordinator at Psychological Health and Performance, which is housed in our athletics department at CU Boulder. Been there for about a year and a half, had about a month and a half of normalcy before things went sideways with the pandemic. But we're back in the office now, so kind of reacclimating, and just really excited to see where our conversation goes today.
Great, thank you. Well, again, if you're just tuning in, so this panel really is about kind of the current state and the potential future of LGBT inclusion in sport, and talking with these awesome sport administrators in various roles to really try and give us an insight of what that looks like day to day. So I'd like to start with a group question. And I kind of want to know, how long have you been involved in your LGBTQ efforts in general? Maria, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Why not? I'm happy to kick it off. So I might have aged myself a little bit already with how long I've been at Northwestern, but I had this question set me into like a reflection stage. Like, when did this start? And so I had to travel back to my days in residential services, starting in college and working as an RA and then a hall director, having the opportunity to support multicultural student affairs. It really afforded me the opportunity to begin to explore and support and lead inclusion programming. And I will not get away from it. It's just been a part of my career ever since, and the best part of what I do. So thinking back on those LGBTQ efforts, it really started in college.
That's awesome. And whoever wants to chime in next.
Sure, I'll jump in. I'm definitely gonna be the rookie of the group. Been strongly involved in this stuff in just under a year. Well, a year, like I said, now going into my second year. It's been an awesome experience and ride. And one thing I definitely wanted to say, it's, you got to be a student, and I am every single day. And the amount of Zooms and seminars and things I've been on, it's just a blast to be a student again and learn, and to make your environment, whether that's a academic institution or whatever organization it is, to make it the most diverse and inclusive community it can be. So I'm the rookie, but I'm excited for my year in and for what's to come.
And I'd say for me, it's an interesting question. If you're asking about kind of these LGBTQ efforts tangibly, I would say probably when Athlete Ally really started in March was when that really kind of ramped up for me. But if we're going back to kind of this education, this learning, this advocacy, I would say probably for me, when I went through a career transition in 2015, I left the world of finance and went into my master's in mental health counseling. And that was where part of that transition was trying to figure out, okay, how do identities play into this? And I was a collegiate athlete, and I really wanted to bring that space back to the collegiate world as a therapist. And so that was one of the main kind of catalysts as I was thinking about this career change. And so I would date it back to then as kind of my own process, but in terms of the work at Columbia, definitely Athlete Ally has been probably our strongest starting point for that.
Kate, I appreciate you naming that, because as I was listening to everyone kind of share their reflective processes of where they've kind of started or been in their work, I was thinking about like these three different phases in my life where I could kind of pinpoint where the work has come from. The first being like my own personal work and my own personal experiences with identity that I've kind of navigated in different ways a couple of times over, I can do math right now, I think, the last 12 years. That's your Friday afternoon mind for you. But I think personally, I've been on a journey for at least 12 years, and that was phase one, even before graduate studies kicked in. And then through graduate studies, thinking more complexly and from that mental health lens, and then additionally thinking from that performance lens, what the impacts are for student athletes. And I myself too was a student athlete. And so I was grappling with those different challenges within my identity as a person, and then also as an athlete, and how to try and merge the two. So I think that was really growing, and it's definitely shifted and changed now that I'm in a position as a supervisor for folks that are coming up in their clinical degrees. And then especially now being a training coordinator within an athletics department, doing more work, not just with folks that are in our department coming through for training, but also with our support staff, with our coaches, the upper administrators, to really try and help continue their growth and learning, and how to bring that and fold that into the system that is athletics. So kind of three phases, I would say, starting at least 12 years ago, but it's shifted and changed over the course of that time. And Mike, to what you said, I still feel like a newbie. I think I always will. I think there are always things that are shifting, changing, constantly have to be learning. So I still feel that way too.
Agreed.
Great, thank you
Also
all.
agree, absolutely.
That's an awesome segue, because as we've all been involved with this work, I think no matter what, there are, you know, different phases of our own sort of like reflective growth and development. And that kind of brings me into my next question, which is that, you know, as we've seen on both like an individual and like broader organizational levels, you know, recently the NCAA has really been kind of encouraging DEI work, and has you know, sort of mandated that for departments that can have a you know, a separate DEI focused role, that they do have a point person for those efforts. So I'm wondering, Maria, could you tell us a little bit about your perspective and sort of Northwestern's path, and how those, you know, that NCAA you know, encouragement has impacted your athletic department and sort of strategic planning around that?
Yes, certainly. So going from that bigger picture, because I think that that's an important piece, I'm happy to touch on the NCAA's move, the shift to encourage more DE&I work, certainly bringing the membership institution perspective into play here. So I think there are a number of ways that the NCAA has worked to not only encourage, but also support DE&I work. And I'm coming off the heels. I'm looking over here because I have a second screen where I still have my agenda up for the Inclusion Forum. So I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the leadership and support of the NCAA Office of Inclusion staff, and all the work that they have and continue to do, whether it be the Inclusion Forum or webinars that, you know, as we've shifted to this, you know, more virtual environment, the webinars that they've done throughout the year, and just so much more. But to name Ryan, the NCAA has also called for that identification of an ADID, which is the Athletics Diversity and Inclusion Designee. And that certainly has been an additional step to encourage DE&I work. I think the ADID, just to name what that is, it's a staff member designated at each membership institution or conference office that serves specifically, and I want to make sure I use their language, as a conduit for information related to DE&I issues and inclusive practices, right? So the designation, as you can imagine, and I think all of our positions are a little bit different, but I think we share common experiences that our work takes different shapes and sizes, even within a conference across different institutions. So the ADID shape is, or position is very, very similar in that it's shows up in different ways across the membership institutions, and has, but I do think it has, most importantly, it's really aided in continuing the conversation about how DE&I efforts and positions can, and I'm feeling a little bit bold on a Friday, right? Dare I say should take shape across campuses, and how they're resourced, and what accountability might look like within the role. So, well, I think the initial role is very much so rooted in communication and information sharing, and there are recommendations certainly attached to the ADID role for training and policy review. What I think is the most valuable piece right now is that it started a conversation. It's begun to build a community that will assist in our growth and continue exploration on how the NCAA and the ADID designee may advance DE&I work. So what gives me excitement in that is I think there's a roadmap, and this was a part of the sessions for the Inclusion Forum, but there is a roadmap that can be a guide for this evolution as we look at the SWA designation and how that started and how that has taken shape. So certainly at Northwestern, you know, we've had I'm thinking specifically of the evolution of my role at Northwestern. We've been really intentional for some time about our DE&I work, student facing, and very quickly we've realized that if we want to shift a culture, we're having these great programs, great conversations with students. It's like, but we can't shift our culture and our community if we're not doing that across the board. And so, you know, we started doing that, a little coach and staff programming as well, but that was just kind of an add-on. And as this conversation continued and the NCAA started pushing a little bit more, I think you have seen, and you certainly have seen at Northwestern, the development of individuals who are not just serving in that ADID role. Words are hard on Friday afternoon. They're hard always, but Friday and ADID, criminy. Okay, but the ADID role is really rooted in communication. That conversation that it sparked has really developed or led to the development of roles like Chief Diversity Inclusion Officers within athletics, like the position at Northwestern. So we're starting, right? We're starting to be more intentional in this work. And I just hope we can continue to, in spaces like this, continue to talk about how we can be intentional, how this can take shape within departments and how it can be resourced and supported. That was a lot of words, Ryan. I hope I answered your question, but if you didn't, throw me another one and I'll be more specific.
I loved every bit of that. And again, I think it's so refreshing that in all of our reflections that there's this idea of like constantly learning, constantly feeling new in not only the drive to really educate ourselves and educate others, but in this like very much sort of passionate field of the work taking on a larger purpose. And that is, again, a fantastic segue to my next question, which is to Mike, who admittedly is newer in the DE&I field and roles and responsibilities, but again has I think an amazing perspective coming from not only a coaching role, but also coming from a faith-based school. So I'm wondering, Mike, can you talk a little bit about what it is actually like being newer in DE&I work, and maybe also talk about what it's like doing that work at a faith-based school?
Sure. So like I said, I briefly touched on it. Well, I guess I could start by saying, what does it look like? It's intimidating. It absolutely is. But you can't be afraid to fail. The amount of seminars I've been on, you can't be afraid to fail, and you got to keep learning and being a student. But when our department decided, hey, this has to become a forefront issue. We have to be better. We have to make strides. We have to be progressive. You got to dive in. Feet first, head first, doesn't matter. You got to dive in and just got to be persistent. So it was intimidating, but like I said, I'm enjoying the process of being a student again and learning something completely new to me. Not in all aspects, but it's to do the work and not be a true professional in it is, like I said, it can be a little scary, but I've had a blast. Being from a faith-based school, probably the most misconstrued thing about it is I think of it being at a faith-based school and not looking at it from the outside eye. So I can talk about Marist we obviously were a private Catholic institution for a very long time and eventually dropped the Catholic. So when I talk about our campus and our environment, it's not overly religious, but to an outside eye, they don't know that. So for a faith-based school to kind of be progressive and make these moves, I think it shows what a great ally that they're trying to be. And, let's be honest, and religion hasn't always had how do I say this correctly, hasn't always thought of the LGBTQ community in the most positive light. So an outside eye, I think, faith-based community, they're not advanced in this. They're not doing this. They're not doing this for, making a safe space for these people or these people. So for a school like Marist to be able to do these things and increase their AEI score and all those things, I think it shows a strong ally in whether we're strongly religious or not, in the faith-based community, that we want to be better. We want to create that kind of community. And like I said, I remember reading a report, or it wasn't really a study, but I guess it was kind of a report from UCLA School of Law, Williams Institute. And for those that participated in it, they said that almost half of LGBTQ adults in the United States identify as being some sort of religious, and so in my mind, religious institutions, organizations, we got to be better. Absolutely. And that was just kind of a not mind blowing, but it was an awesome stat to come across, especially working at Marist. And but for a faith-based institution to show that they care and they want to be better, I think that's just a huge step in itself.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna throw a curveball in here real quick. Could you also talk about maybe what your cross-campus collaborations look like? So make it, as you said, Marist has shifted away from the faith-based history that it once had to being a little more a bit more contemporary, I guess, in in its marketing, we'll say. So I'm wondering now if you encounter any clubs or anyone on campus who still do want to kind of consider that faith-based history, and how you've gone about those conversations.
Yeah. So without getting too prolonged, the name of the game when we started was alignment. Alignment in the athletic department, and then eventually let's align with across campus. So I'll briefly touch on alignment in the athletic department. So obviously there's a group of administrators and coaches that founded the IDEA committee. And then I was able to jump on into SAC, our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And I'm facilitator for that, and facilitator for the Diversity and Inclusion subgroup of our SAC. I'm also not on paper, but facilitator for our Black Student Athlete Alliance, our BSAA. And then one of my SAC students from Diversity and Inclusion, she's restarting, because we had it once before, our own Athlete Ally chapter. So I guess short and sweet, aligning, I just got lucky that I kind of was able, or I'm a little bit into this, a little bit into that. I can help us, I can cover bases. I can get them to do this with us, or that group to do that. But the name of the game was truly alignment. Why do something that someone else is already doing that we can do together and do it better? So once we kind of aligned the athletic department, then we reached out across campus and said, okay, what are you guys doing that we can help out on, or what can you guys are doing that we can specifically target student athletes? While they're doing the entire general population, hey, let's make it student athlete specific. So you don't have, hey, here's 700 kids of the population that you don't not have to worry about, but hey, we'll do it for them too. You know what I'm saying? So those conversations got better and better. And then one thing, not so much LGBTQ community wise, but one thing that I was super proud about, and I know this may pop up further in a question, but our Marist votes for the election, our Marist votes across campus, they were doing something where getting people registered, all that kind of stuff. So my SAC group, and along with the IDEA committee, we went to Marist votes. How are you operating? And we said, we're going to do what you're doing and set up over in the athletic facilities. So that, I think that kind of shows the alignment, and they're willing, we're willing. All you got to do is have a conversation, pick up the phone. Hey, Ryan, I'm a big phone call guy. I'm calling everybody I can. What are you doing? Let me get on. Can I help? But so conversation's been great, and it's going to continue because it works and we're getting things done.
That's awesome. I love hearing everybody's own stories and experiences of this. Again, awesome segue, because I'm about to ask Kate a really similar question. I know that Columbia Athletics, they recently hosted a really large conversation about LGBTQ plus inclusion, and there were members of a bunch of different departments around the campus. Can you talk a little bit more about how that conversation kind of came to be, and what you think it means for Columbia Athletics?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. And a lot of this answer is going to echo a lot of what Mike has said, because a lot of this comes from this idea of alignment, right? And really championing and being intentional with our DEI efforts and the intersectionality of that, right? And so we have all these affinity groups, and how can we start to bring that intersectionality there and that alignment there? And so what one of our offices did was they started a social conversations platform where they were doing monthly webinars based on different topics of concern. They did athlete activism in the Olympics. They did, I'm totally blanking on the other ones. Then they came to us and they really want to highlight the Athlete Ally Affinity Group. And we were lucky enough to get Hudson Taylor, who's the CEO, on the call. And it was one of the co-founders and co-presidents of Athlete Ally, who was a senior on the women's rowing team and a Barnard student as well. So again, when we're talking about that intersectionality, kind of those crossover identities where Barnard students, there's, it's different from being a Columbia student, and they take a lot of the same classes, they're on the same sports teams. And so it was a conversation about inclusivity, and Ruben Nadar, who was a student athlete, brought a wonderful perspective to talk about all those multiple identities. It was co-facilitated by our lightweight rowing coach. As I said, we had Hudson Taylor on, and then we had a women's basketball alum from an older generation. And so it was a cross-generational conversation. It was a relevant conversation. I thought it was just so powerful and really demonstrated how intentional and how much of a priority Columbia and the athletic department has made this conversation about LGBTQ inclusiveness, and how it's really come to the forefront in a way, like I said, before Athlete Ally started, people look at Columbia, it's in New York, got a pretty chill vibe. So you don't always really think like, okay, we have to be intentional about this. Like you're in New York, it's LGBTQ friendly, but what that does is it doesn't show any representation. There's no conversations happening. And so even if it felt that way for some, you don't know how that experience was for others. And so having this chapter start, having these conversations happen, having people of all levels of the department, outside the department, student athletes join this conversation, coaches, staff, really shows, I think, that alignment between all groups. And as I said, it was an awesome conversation. I think a really, really important stepping stone. But to reference back to Maria's point of this blueprint, I was on that same call. I'm thinking that you're talking about. It was wonderful. Where does this lead? Right. And so I think the next step is, again, that alignment, that collaborating with student groups, aligning better with our SAC groups and our BSAA affinity group, and really trying to figure out what are these tangible steps and these actionable steps that we're implementing that are having a tangible change. Right. And so the AEI, huge part of that. And, being part of a perfectionist institution of the Ivy League, as soon as those scores came out, everyone was like, all right, we gotta fix this. Like, why are we at 25? Oh, that's not good. We're the lowest. And it really kind of lit that fire of competition, and it's wonderful. Some people see that as kind of like, oh, you're just checking the boxes. And in some ways, maybe, right? Because it's just those things that we're putting on the website. But in doing so, it's allowing accountability, and it's allowing these conversations to happen. It's giving the Athlete Ally group a platform to ask for changes. And I think that really was evident from this panel as well. So long-winded answer, a lot of echoing, but I've been just so excited, and I feel so grateful to be the Athlete Ally advisor. I'm grateful to be here to speak on behalf of them, but I must say, my team, my Athlete Ally team, they do all the work. I give them a Zoom link that doesn't expire. I coordinate with the athletic department, but they do it all, and they've been fantastic. So I want to give them all a huge shout out.
While we're on the topic, Kate, actually, can you talk a little bit about what the Athlete Ally chapter on your campus does, or sort of looks like on a day-to-day basis, or a week-to-week basis, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I think I was asked to be the faculty advisor, maybe January was when these conversations started. And our women's basketball team was hosting the first ever Pride Night in March. And so we're like, oh, this is an awesome opportunity to launch. March 6th, luckily, was before the pandemic. So the launch happened. We had a wonderful Pride Night. It was our unofficial soft opening. We had a pizza party. Wonderful. Kind of got our group membership base. Then campus shut down. And a lot of people, I was expecting just silence and just okay, we gotta adjust to this different world. Our e-board, they were like, no, let's keep going. What can we plan? What can we do? How can we align? And then summer 2020, how can we be allies to the Black and BIPOC communities? How can we be supportive and champion their voices and lift their voices? How can we use Pride as a platform to really show our social media presence and do this in a virtual way? And I was just blown away by their creativity, their resilience, their perseverance. And so what that did is it really got us rolling to kind of expand our e-board, grow our membership base. And so when we returned in the fall, this past fall, we had a webinar with one of our sports historians at Columbia about athlete activism and kind of how we can raise athletes' voices and how the platform has shifted or become more visible and how you can use that. We've done virtual 5Ks just to kind of keep people moving, get kind of buy-in, and administrators do it, coaches do it, student athletes do it. So it's kind of, we're really trying to bring in all these different aspects of the athletic department and the broader community. We did that panel, and on a week-to-week basis, it's a lot of, we probably meet every other week during the summer, and probably, I think we're meeting weekly during the school semester. Pride's been a big month for us. So they are doing individual videos on what does Pride mean to them as the e-board? What does inclusiveness look like? What has their experience been? They've opened it up to coaches, administrators, non-athletes, anybody to be involved. And so we're really working on kind of that community building piece. And our three main aspects are community building, policy, and education. And so advocating for policies that fight against the anti-trans legislation. They were active in that. We brought in educators from our health group to talk about gay men's health. So they're really trying to partner with those cross-campus groups, and they've been wonderful. And so Pride, it's been 4 days into Pride. I think we've got a few videos up, hopefully more are coming. We're doing another 5K during Pride Month. And so really trying to just capitalize on this virtual world and be as creative as possible. But like I said, I've been completely blown away and just really excited to be part of their journey.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. I can only imagine what typing up meeting minutes is like, and the poor soul who probably has carpal tunnel already from all the things that you're doing and talking about and getting done. My next question is for Mac, and I know that Kate certainly could have talked about this as well, from also being a mental health practitioner. Mac, you mostly focus on student athlete mental health and performance. And so, even the most recent research shows that LGBT students face more barriers, both systemic and acutely, than their non-LGBTQ plus peers. And that impact on mental health can also impact performance, right? So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit of how your work tries to mitigate some of those challenges for your LGBT plus student athletes.
Absolutely. And you're right, performance, I see it as the person and what's going on in their life is absolutely going to impact their performance. You can't separate the performer from the person. And that's something that I know we emphasize a lot in PHP at Boulder, to say you're a person and you're a whole person, and all those parts do play into your performance. So I'll kind of speak to kind of these two different areas that I view the work that I'm doing kind of tackling, one being specifically with the individual and the other one being more from kind of the larger system. And I'm going to try and see if I can track and thread things that Maria, Mike, and Kate have already referenced into my answer. So we'll see how well I do with that one. On the individual level, it's really about, getting to know what's going on in their world and their life and what is impacting them. So, for instance, we're in Colorado, but their home state might be a state where there are, bills and legislation coming out that might impact their safety, their ability to adopt if they want to have kids in the future, access to healthcare if they're trans or non-binary. So, I'm constantly thinking about not only the environment that we're in presently, which would be athletics in Boulder, but then looking at the state at large, looking at their home state, looking at, what is their environment like with family, with friends. I'm taking into consideration all of those aspects, and I'm not necessarily focusing in on that if that's not the thing that individual is coming to therapy to talk about, but I am holding that as this is a part of the big picture and how could that be impacting them, but not necessarily leading with that if that's not what is their focus, because that can be pretty harmful in its own way to kind of pigeonhole someone of, oh, because you identify within this community, this must be impacting you. But it is definitely something that I'm aware of and want to be thoughtful around and intentional about. As far as that individual support, something that we've talked about as a team that we want to be able to provide for the individuals and also kind of in that therapeutic style is a Pride specific support group. This past year, even with COVID and being remote, we were able to launch some student athlete therapy-based groups, and that can be its own unique challenge to have a therapy group with a college population, and even more challenging within an athletic setting because of stigma around mental health. But it's something that we were able to at least start getting the foundation around. And so the hope and personal plan on my part is to have that be something that we can broaden and include a support group for student athletes in the LGBTQ community from that kind of supportive therapeutic lens. So those are some of the things, individually, zooming out and looking at the broader systemic lens. To Maria's point, we previously did have a DEI officer and realized very quickly that was beyond just an additional role to someone else's role. We needed someone to be solely focusing on that. So we were able to hire an associate athletic director whose role is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm really excited to be able to work with him, moving forward on additional initiatives, trainings, because that's the other thing. I might be working specifically with an athlete, but they're also having a lot of interactions with our support staff, whether it's athletic trainers, academic, supports and coordinators, their coaches, strength and conditioning coaches. If they don't have the education for how they can be supportive and inclusive of their athletes and supporting them as a whole person, you're kind of missing the mark. And I know that's something that Kate had mentioned around, the athlete ally index might feel like, oh, like I've checked these boxes, but absolutely true that, there's an accountability factor for, are we actually walking the walk? And I know I was on a call for the updated athlete ally score, and for CU it had dropped, and we were like, whoa, what just happened? Like, we need to address this. We need to figure out, like, what do we need to do to not just, sit back and be like, well, we've done stuff before. And, so that's something that I think is really important from a systems level, is always looking and checking back in on, well, maybe we've checked this, but how are we doing with it in practice? So, there are other things that, to Mike's point about integrating and aligning with campus, we have partnered with our Pride office on campus to do some staff trainings as well, safe zone trainings. I hope to do more in the future and broaden them further to be specific for our student athletes. And even as I'm listening to myself talk right now, I'm like, oof, there are a lot of things that I want to do. And it's hard because my primary role is as a therapist, you know, as assistant director, as a training coordinator. So I have a lot of hats. So I often am looking for ways to do the, you know, specific individual work, but also looking behind the scenes on, are there ways that I can partner with people or collaborate with people to help be that advocate, be a support, continue to learn for myself as well. You know, that's something that I've been really fortunate to be able to be on our DE&I committee, and that will hopefully continue to inform and support the initiatives that our assistant AD for DE&I is going to, you know, broaden and develop. And there was one more thing I was going to share about that. Oh, and that's also something that, you know, each year I think we're in our 4th or 5th year, I want to say, for an inclusive sports summit. And that's something too that I think is a great way to bring awareness to what inclusivity means, what that can look like, why it's important, how it impacts our student athletes on the field, off the field, in their lives. So I'm gonna wind myself down there because I don't know if I can integrate it any better than that.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, and major props for being able to so succinctly exactly weave you know, everybody else's comments together again. Wow. So I would like to combine and give the group a 2-in-1 question, which is, it's Pride Month, right? At the root basis of it, we've got to talk about pride. So my 2-parter question to you is, what is something that you or your department has done that you are proud of? And hopefully, based off of that answer, you'd be willing to give one piece of practical advice to someone else in similar positions. Matt,
Right,
you hopping in? Yeah,
I'm hopping in. We're gonna reverse order it. So I know today we were actually finalizing, you know, some social media posts to kick off Pride Month. We were talking about using our PHP logo and getting, I'm trying to think of what the appropriate verb would be. We are pridifying our logo, if you will. Like, we want to have an ongoing logo that's ours that reflects pride, that we can use not just during Pride Month, but, you know, throughout the year. Something that I was really proud of last year that we did was on our social media, and in tandem with that DE&I committee that I was a part of, pushed out a lot of information for trans visibility, Trans Day of Remembrance. And I think that was something that felt really impactful and important, and a step in the right direction of, right, like not just having it be singularly in one month, but having it happen throughout the year, because we want to be proud the whole year of who we are as a department, proud of who our colleagues are, our student athletes are, our peers, and, you know, just weave that through the fabric of our culture on the regular. So I am really proud of that. And now that I've been talking, there was something else I was totally gonna note that I was really proud of us for doing, and it's completely evaporated. So if I find it again, I'll bring it back in at the end. But
do you want to jump to your piece of practical advice then?
Maybe that would be it. Oh yes, that actually helped prompt me. Thank you. Even we therapists lose the thread sometimes. So I think my piece of practical advice is, if the space feels like safe and able to be vulnerable, I think the personal stories and vulnerabilities can really foster more understanding and education. And so that's something that I personally like to do anytime I'm in spaces that I feel comfortable and able to do it. And sometimes I do it even when I'm not comfortable. But so that was something that I was proud of, that one of our initiatives last year was these different like dialogues that like brown bag lunch virtual. And I partnered with our Pride office and we did a presentation, and it was a dialogue about, just generating more understanding and visibility for trans and non-binary identities. And that was something that I was very personally open about because I identify as a trans man. And, at any time that I kind of name that out loud to different spaces, I'm always wondering like, ooh, is this safe? Like, how's this going to land? What's the impact going to be? If student athletes are on the call and then they're going to work with me, and how might that influence things? But I was really proud about doing that, and the number of people that were in attendance and the number of people that reached out afterwards just to express gratitude for the information, but also for the vulnerability, because I think it makes it real. Not that it isn't, but I think being able to give that kind of voice and take it just a little step further can really send the message home of, this isn't just policies, this isn't just about checking boxes, like these are lived experiences, and I can speak to a few of them personally. So I think it just helps deepen the understanding and the education that people can learn from that.
To continue with reverse order, I'm happy to jump in. Also, I want to say it's very rare that I'm on a call with athletics folks and there's more than one therapist. So Mac, I'm so happy to not be the solo therapist. That's usually my plug. So very happy to share the space with you. And with that, I will echo a lot because I think we are probably coming from a very similar perspective as being therapists in this space. Some things that I've been really proud of, and I've highlighted some with Athlete Ally. I think by and large that the formation of that group has been huge. Do want to give a shout out. Our department's been fantastic as well. And I think the interesting thing, and Mac, you alluded to this, is right. We have these months for different days of visibility or months of visibility. Amazing. It brings that awareness there, and it gives people kind of a platform to kind of learn and educate, and it's kind of a reminder of like, okay, this is something I should be educating about. And it's still figuring out how can we make sure this is kind of built in. I liked your words, built into that framework and our fabric of the community and our department and the sports teams and trainings that we're doing, the language that we're using. And I've been really proud of the department because it feels like they're trying to do that in this consistent way, where it's not just kind of, okay, we're going to do a handful of things and then we're never going to look back, right? We've been in the pandemic for a year and even or over a year. And I've already seen so much consistency over this past year. And again, just giving our Athlete Ally group a platform and hearing their concerns, hearing them out, hearing ideas that they have. Our athletic director, after our panel with the Athlete Ally folks, jumped on a call with myself and our two co-presidents at the time and was like, okay, what can we do? Right? We had this awesome discussion last night. What can we do? Brainstorm. Here are some things that are feasible. Here are some quick things that we're doing behind the scenes. And I was like, whoa, this is happening. And I have a feeling I've heard from others and our BSAA advisor, similar conversations are happening. And so I think that's something that I've been just incredibly proud of, to be part of a department that's willing to kind of look at itself, continue to educate, continue to learn, and continue to provide those opportunities to staff. Advice I would give, love being vulnerable and speaking up when safe, and also when you don't feel comfortable. It's hard, but can be helpful. I think my advice would probably be, don't stop fighting. It's exhausting and it can be hard. And I think in athletics, we all wear a lot of hats, and priorities can shift. And I think finding small ways to continue the fight, whether it's a safe zone training or putting a safe zone sticker up, or trying to shift away from saying guys, right? Putting your pronouns on Zoom. There are very non-intrusive, effortful ways to show that growth and continue the fight and have people ask questions or allow the opportunity for questions. And so it doesn't have to be these huge overhaul initiatives all the time. Those are definitely needed, but it's not your fight alone. And so I think for other folks would just say, don't stop fighting, even if it's not at a linear pace.
This is so much fun. So such a great way to spend the end of a week. So I just want to thank you both for sharing so much. And not being someone who is a mental health practitioner in any way, shape, or form, the fact that you all find the thread in itself is amazing. And then weave it together. It's just like, if I can find the thread, it's like, you won today, Maria. Today was a win. So I really appreciate you all. My piece of advice is I feel like very similar, Kate, but I'll start with something that I'm most proud of. I'm coming up on a year in this role, so I'm in this very reflective state, and certainly the NCAA Inclusion Forum always like shakes me into that state of reflection as well. So something, if I can have a 1A and B, and I know it's a little selfish, but I'll talk really quickly, but something that I'm so very proud of is in our department, our community, is creating a chief diversity and inclusion role that is singularly focused on centering and advancing DE&I work throughout our community. And it's not just the creation of the role, but the fact that we took it a step further. So once created, believing that the commitment to inclusion is not the work of one, but is the work of everyone. I am so proud and not at all surprised at the number of champions who've raised their hands, who's rolled up their sleeves and are truly committed to asking hard questions, to having hard conversations, and holding each other accountable to advance our culture. And many of those, the 1B, many of these champions are the individuals, both students and staff alike, who sat at a table in Anderson Hall 4 years ago now, maybe 5 years ago now, and made a commitment and dreamed up a way to continue to celebrate and build community that affirms our LGBT community family. And that brain trust in Anderson developed what would become an annual Athlete Alliance students versus coaches and staff kickball event. And it has just become seeing staff and students across all 19 teams. I'm talking our head football coach, our golf coaches, our fencing student athletes, our starting point guard, seeing everybody on the field together with rainbows across their shirt, ready to compete. But more so, what is so, even amongst athletes who competition is really exciting, but the excitement to join in providing an opportunity to lift the voices of our LGBT students and staff and to send clear messages of allyship. It's just so powerful. And I'm so proud to be a part of a community who continues to champion important efforts like this, but more so to be a part of a community that shows up, particularly when it matters most. So that's what I'm most proud of. Thank you for putting up with my 1A and B. But the practical advice, Kate, you might have, if you were on the inclusion forum today, Tamika Catchings hosted one of the final panels, and she ended it with let your energy and your light shine. This work is powerful, it's challenging, it's transformational. And as I reflect on the last year, I think some advice I would say would be to set boundaries and to protect your energy and your light so that it does continue to shine. And remember that you're not alone in this work. You surround yourself with champions who will stand alongside you, who will lift you when you need, who will hold you accountable. And what I think has really been a great reminder for me, surround yourself with people who will remind you this is a marathon, not a sprint. So that is the advice I would give. And I thank the champions here today for helping me end this week in such a phenomenal way.
Well, I'll be brief. I don't want to take up too much more people's Friday night, but probably most proud of, and it's simple, but raising our AEI. Kate, you mentioned it. We're in athletics. Okay, it's a metric I'm going to chase for. We want to be the best in our conference, be the best in the nation. I'm super proud of that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Alyssa Gates. She's the director of our Center for Student Athlete Enhancement Center. The amount of things she's done and continues to do, I can sit in a whole hour Zoom and tell them all. So having her just around and continue hustling has been phenomenal. But short and sweet advice, anybody can do it. I'm the linebackers coach from Marist College. Okay, step on toes, hold people accountable. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, a predominantly Black community. When George Floyd passed, I know I'm getting off topic a little bit. coming back to a PWI, yeah, we can be better. One of the first LGBTQ seminars I sat on, they said, all right, think about these 5 things, like who you love, where you're from, favorite food, all these things. Now tell me about yourself without saying those things. And I'm like, wow, yeah, okay, I get it. Why, why can't my Black and brown brothers and sisters and the people in my community that are with the LGBT community, why can't they walk around as comfortable as I can? So it doesn't matter who you are, what position, what it is. Do you care about your community, and how great do you want to make it? And like I said, it's consistent. It's being consistent, being persistent, and anybody can do it. You got to take that initial jump. But blessed to be a part of this panel. You guys have been so awesome and informative to me. So thank you very much.
I'm genuinely like just blown away, just so lucky to be able to moderate this and be able to talk to you all. Again, thank you so much for being on this panel and spending your Friday with me. The last thing I'm going to say is that if you are interested in looking up your AEI score or any other Division I school's AEI score, or to learn more about Athlete Ally, please visit aei.athleteally.org to learn more. And you can always also contact us through that website. Again, thank you so much to our panelists today. And have a wonderful Pride Month.